Hi everyone. So I went to both Catholic and public school, and I basically got the same sort of sex education in both settings. And it went something like this. So in my junior high years in Catholic school, we had this program called In Control. And one of the demonstrations that the ladies gave us was they took a cup. It was more like a red Solo cup, but they took the cup and they passed it around the room and made everyone spit in the cup. Then proceeded to tell a half dozen or more 14-year-olds that this is you after you have sex before marriage. Does anybody really want to be that disgusting? Because nobody wants to have sex with somebody who has sex before marriage. Now, that, my friends, is not sex education. It's fear-mongering, which is why in the speech I want to persuade you to believe that as a country we need to do better to educate our young adults and have a more comprehensive sex education system, especially when ideas surrounding sex and sexual orientation and identity are always changing and young people have questions that aren't being matched with factual answers. Now, unfortunately, when I went to public school, this continued, and it was basically all abstinence-based sex education, but in the public school, the pregnancy rates were much higher, because I guess it was more accepted in public school than it was in Catholic school. But, my main sources were factors associated with the content of sex education in U.S. public secondary schools, Dr. Chandramoulie's TED Talk, and the journal Teens and Contraception from Brown University. Now, according to the article, Teens and Contraception, half of all females and 2/3 of all male adolescents are sexually active by the age of 17. So, the simple fact is that teens are going to have sex regardless of whether we try and scare them with abstinence-based sex education demonstrations or not. So the question remains, why are we still using this system if it obviously doesn't work? Well, there are a few answers to that. Many people still believe and view sex as taboo or wrong, which is crazy because sex can be related back to everything in our society. So here's a question. Try and name one political issue that can't be related to sex. I'm sure there's a few, but for example, obviously, overpopulation. People weren't educated enough to have contraception, and now we have too many people. Homelessness. What else? Money issues. There's just too many people because people either don't have access to contraception or aren't educated on safe sex practices. Now, according to the article, factors associated with the content of sex education in U.S. public secondary schools, 2003, in many Western developed countries, with adolescent pregnancy and STI rates lower than the U.S. rates, there's not only a greater social acceptance of sexual activity among teenagers, but also greater access to different forms of contraception like condoms and birth control. Which I think it's funny because as Americans we always claim that we're the best at everything, but we fall behind in something as simple as educating our young adults about safe sex practices. So, if everything in our society can be related to sex and revolves around sex, then why don't we have the best system to educate future generations about it? Again, an example is in Dr. Chandramoulie's TED Talk. He points out that one reason is that many people believe that comprehensive sex education encourages young adults to have sex before they're ready, which is completely absurd and a baseless statement, 100%. Because teens are going to have sex regardless. I mean, we're animals. number one, and all living things biologically revolve around sex. We're biologically built for it. And which is why it's so unrealistic to expect young adults who are full of sex hormones to suppress them and their natural instincts and desires. It's completely outrageous, in all honesty, which is why we need a better sex education system. Now, if I were to write the curriculum for a comprehensive sex education course, it wouldn't just be a semester where, like with my health class, we did a week of sex education maybe. But this would be full year long so that you can get every nitty-gritty detail that you need to know, because people need to know. And it would include anatomy and physiology. You need to know the parts that you're working with. Sexuality, because there's lots of them these days. Healthy relationships, because we see oftentimes in young adults that they don't know what a healthy relationship is, and it's sad. And they need to know about safe sex practices, pregnancy, postpartum, factual information about abortions, adoption, and information and sources for STI screening. Now, in conclusion, I was lucky enough to have my questions met with factual answers, but some people don't have that privilege, which is why we need to do better as a country to educate these young people about sex and safe sex practices. Thank you.